I never thought I'd be the villain in my own family story. But that's exactly how they painted me the night I walked out of Bellucci's, the night that changed everything. My name is Ashley Winters. I'm 32, I work in marketing, and until 6 months ago, I was the family ATM. Not officially, of course. No one ever put it in those terms. It was always, just until next month, or I'll pay you back when things get better. Spoiler alert, things never got better, and I never saw a dime of what I'd given away. Growing up in a family where money was always tight shaped me in ways I'm still discovering. My parents, Mike and Linda, did their best with what they had, which often wasn't much. My sister Melissa, 2 years younger than me, and I learned early on to not ask for things. No fancy sneakers, no birthday parties at theme parks, no expensive hobbies. We made do, and we were happy enough, though the constant undercurrent of financial stress was always there. I watched my parents work themselves to exhaustion. Dad juggling 2 jobs, Mom picking up night shifts at the hospital while still making sure we had home-cooked meals and clean clothes. They were heroes to me, even if I didn't appreciate it then. So when I landed my first real job after college, I wanted nothing more than to help ease their burden. It started small, groceries here, a utility bill there. Then my sister needed help with rent after her divorce. My parents' car broke down and needed expensive repairs. My aunt had medical bills. My cousin needed tuition money. One by one, family members discovered that Ashley had a steady job and a soft heart. The requests grew more frequent, the amounts larger, and I said yes. Every time, I said yes, because that's what family does, right? We take care of each other. At least, that's what I told myself as my savings dwindled and my own dreams, home ownership, travel, financial security, kept getting pushed further into the future. Then came the promotion. Marketing director at Horizon Media, a position I'd worked toward for years. The salary bump was substantial, but more importantly, it validated all those late nights, all those extra projects, all the sacrifices. For once, I decided the money would be for me. I'd already found a modest house I loved, and with the promotion, I could finally afford the down payment and work toward paying off the mortgage early. I could build something for myself. I had no idea how much resentment that decision would create or how quickly my life would unravel because of it. The night it all came to a head at Bellucci's was supposed to be a celebration, my celebration. Instead, it became the final test of how much I was willing to sacrifice before standing up for myself. And sometimes, standing up for yourself means walking away. The promotion came on a rainy Tuesday. I remember because I'd forgotten my umbrella and arrived at the office with rain-splattered glasses and frizzy hair. Not exactly the polished professional look I'd been aiming for. "Ashley, can you come by my office when you get settled?" My boss, Vanessa, caught me as I was hanging up my damp coat. My stomach dropped. Had I messed up the Johnson campaign pitch? Was this about the quarterly numbers? "Give me 5 minutes," I asked, attempting a smile as I pushed my wet hair back from my forehead. "Take your time," she said with an unusual smile. "And maybe grab some coffee. You look like you could use it." 20 minutes later, dry and caffeinated, I knocked on her office door. "The answer is yes," Vanessa said as soon as I sat down. "I'm sorry?" "Marketing director. The position is yours if you want it. The board approved it this morning." I sat there, blinking stupidly as the words sank in. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. You've earned this, Ashley. The luminescent campaign was brilliant, and you've consistently delivered results above projections for the past 2 years. We need someone with your vision and work ethic in the director's chair." She slid a folder across her desk. Inside was an offer letter with a salary that made me catch my breath. It was nearly double what I was making. "This is... wow," I managed to say. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Vanessa laughed. "Unless you need time to think about it?" "No. I mean, yes, I accept. Absolutely. We spent the next hour discussing my new responsibilities, the team I'd be leading, and the upcoming projects that would be mine to oversee. By the time I left her office, my head was spinning with possibilities. I walked back to my desk in a daze, clutching the folder to my chest like it might disappear if I loosened my grip. My colleague and best friend at the office, Zoe, looked up from her computer. "What's with the face? Did Vanessa make you rewrite the entire Carter proposal or something?" I leaned in and whispered, "I got the director position." Her squeal drew curious glances from around the office. "Holy shit, Ash, that's amazing." She jumped up to hug me, nearly knocking over her coffee in the process. "We're celebrating tonight, no arguments." "I should tell my family first," I said, already pulling out my phone. Zoe rolled her eyes. "Fine, family dinner first, but then you and me tequila shots tomorrow night." I laughed and promised her a night out, then stepped away to call my mom. I was buzzing with excitement, eager to share my good news. This wasn't just a win for me. It was for all of us, the daughter of a nurse's aide and a warehouse worker, becoming a marketing director before she turned 35. Mom answered on the third ring. "Ashley, honey, is everything okay?" It was always her first question, though calls in the middle of the day could only mean disaster. "Everything's great, Mom. Amazing, actually. I got the promotion." "What promotion, dear?" There was noise in the background, the TV or radio competing with her attention. "Marketing director, the one I told you about last month?" "I got it." "Oh, that's wonderful, sweetie." Her tone brightened. "Does it come with a raise?" I laughed. "Yes, a significant one. I can finally afford that down payment on the house I showed you. And with the mortgage terms I'm getting, I might even be able to pay it off early if I'm careful." There was a pause, longer than felt natural. "A house? You're buying a house?" "I've been saving for years, Mom. Remember that cute craftsman I showed you pictures of? The one with the yellow door and the bay window? It just came back on the market, and now I can actually afford it." That's nice, honey." Her tone had shifted, the enthusiasm gone flat. "So you're really doing this house thing?" I felt a familiar prickle of unease. "Yes, I'm really doing this house thing. Why? What's wrong?" She sighed, a sound I knew too well. "Nothing's wrong. It's just, your father and I were hoping. Well, we didn't want to ask until you were settled in the new position, but our roof is leaking again, and the estimate we got is way more than we can manage right now. We thought maybe you could help now that you're getting this big raise." And there it was, not "congratulations on your hard work" or "we're so proud of your achievement." Instead, before I'd even received my first new paycheck, my success was already being measured by how it could benefit someone else. "How much is the estimate?" I asked, my excitement dimming. "About 15,000. I know it's a lot, but, Mom, that's almost half of what I've saved for my down payment." "Well, you don't have to buy a house right now, do you? You're just one person. You could keep renting for a while longer. Family has to come first, Ashley. Family first." The mantra I'd lived by for years. The reason my savings account had taken so long to grow in the first place. "Let me think about it," I said, not wanting to have this conversation in the middle of the office. "I need to look at the numbers." "Of course, dear. We don't need an answer right away. Maybe come to dinner this weekend and we can discuss it. Your sister will be there, and she's bringing the kids." I agreed to Sunday dinner, said goodbye, and sat back down at my desk, the glow of my achievement considerably dulled. Zoe, who had been pretending not to eavesdrop, raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Instead of congratulating you, they already have plans for your money?" I gave her a weak smile. "How did you know?" "Because I've known you for 5 years, and every time something good happens in your life, your family finds a way to make it about them." She leaned closer. "What is it this time? Medical bills? Car repairs? Bail money?" "Roof repairs," I admitted. "And how much of your down payment would that consume?" "About half." Zoe whistled low. Ash, you've been talking about buying that house for 2 years. You've worked your ass off for this promotion. Don't let them guilt you out of your dreams again. It's not that simple. They're family. And you're a person, not a bank. She shook her head. Just think about what you want for once. Promise me that. I promised. But as I turned back to my computer, I knew Sunday dinner would be a test of my resolve. A test I wasn't sure I would pass. The rest of the week flew by in a whirlwind of transition meetings and briefings on my new role. By Friday, I was exhausted but exhilarated. Zoe dragged me out for the promised celebration, and for a few hours, surrounded by friends raising glasses to my success, I allowed myself to feel proud and hopeful. But as Sunday approached, a familiar knot of dread formed in my stomach. I loved my family, but their expectations weighed on me like an anchor, threatening to pull me under just as I was learning to swim. I arrived at my parents' house at 5 o'clock sharp, a bottle of wine in one hand and my resolve clutched tightly in the other. Mom opened the door, arms wide for a hug, acting as though our phone conversation had never happened. "There's our big career woman," she exclaimed, ushering me inside. Everyone's in the living room. Your Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim came by too. They wanted to congratulate you in person. I hesitated in the entryway. "You told everyone about my promotion?" "Of course. We're all so proud of you." What she meant, I realized, as I entered a living room full of expectant faces, was that they were all hopeful about what my promotion meant. For them, dinner was a parade of pointed questions and not-so-subtle hints. How much was the raise exactly? Would I be too busy in my new role to help with the family reunion planning? Had I thought about my cousin Taylor's college fund situation? By the time dessert was served, I felt cornered, my professional achievement, reduced to what it could provide for everyone else at the table. "So," Dad said, setting down his fork with an air of getting down to business, "your mother tells me you're thinking of buying a house." All conversation stopped. I could feel the collective gaze of my family waiting for my response. "Yes," I said, trying to sound confident. "I found a place I love, and with the promotion, I can finally afford it." "That's quite a commitment for someone your age," Aunt Carol chimed in. "Are you sure you want to tie yourself down like that?" Before I could answer, my sister Melissa spoke up. "I thought you were going to help Mom and Dad with the roof," she said, accusation clear in her tone. "They can't keep living with buckets catching leaks every time it rains." "I haven't made any decisions yet," I said carefully. "I'm still figuring out my new budget." "What's to figure out?" Melissa pressed. "Family comes first, right? That's what you always say." I looked around the table at the family I'd supported for years, who had gathered not to celebrate my achievement, but to stake their claims on the fruits of my labor. Something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped. "Yes, family comes first," I said slowly. "But I'm part of this family too. Don't I deserve to put myself first sometimes?" The silence that followed was deafening. "Of course you do, honey," Mom said quickly, though her expression suggested otherwise. "We're just trying to understand your priorities." "My priority right now is securing my future," I said. "I've helped when I could, but this promotion, this house, they're important to me. More important than your parents' home falling apart?" Dad asked, his voice tight with disappointment. I felt a flush of anger. "That's not fair. I've given thousands of dollars to this family over the years. I've paid for car repairs, medical bills, rent when Melissa couldn't make it, braces for the kids. And now that we need you again, you're too busy buying yourself a fancy house," Melissa cut in. "It's not a fancy house," I exclaimed. "It's a small starter home that I've worked incredibly hard to afford. Why is it okay for me to help everyone else achieve their dreams, but not okay for me to pursue my own?" The room erupted into a chorus of justifications and reminders of family obligation. Each voice overlapped the next, creating a symphony of guilt that threatened to drown me. "Enough," I finally shouted, standing up from the table. "I'm not doing this anymore. I love you all, but I can't be the solution to everyone's financial problems. Not anymore. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, ignoring the protests behind me. As I reached for the handle, my mother caught up to me. "Ashley, please," she said, tears in her eyes. "We're just trying to get by." I softened, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I know, Mom, and I want to help. I do. But I need to live my life, too. Can you understand that?" She nodded, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. "We'll figure something out," she said, but her tone suggested I was abandoning them to an impossible situation. I left with the weight of their expectations, still pressing down on me, but for the first time, I was determined not to buckle under it. The drive home was filled with a mixture of guilt and something else, a tentative sense of freedom that I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. That night I made an offer on the house with the yellow door. 3 days later, it was accepted, and the war with my family truly began. News of my home purchase spread through the family like wildfire. I received a series of increasingly upset texts from my mother, culminating in a voicemail that still makes my stomach clench when I think about it. "I just don't understand how you could be so selfish." Her voice trembled through the speaker. "After everything we've done for you. We're family, Ashley. What are we supposed to do now?" What they had done for me, as though raising me had been a loan I was expected to repay with interest for the rest of my life. I didn't call her back right away. Instead, I sat on my apartment balcony with a glass of wine, looking out at the city lights and trying to untangle the mess of emotions inside. Me, guilt, anger, confusion, and beneath it all, a stubborn conviction that I wasn't wrong to want something for myself. The next morning, I called a roofer I'd found online and arranged for them to give my parents an estimate. It wasn't the full amount, but it was what I could manage without derailing my own plans. A compromise. I emailed the details to my dad, hoping it would be enough to ease the tension. His response was brief. "Thanks, but we've already found someone cheaper. Melissa's going to help us cover it." The implied message was clear. Melissa was stepping up where I had failed, the good daughter taking my place. For weeks, this pattern continued. I moved into my new house, a milestone that should have been celebrated, but received only cool acknowledgments from my family. Melissa's husband got a promotion too, a much smaller one than mine, and my parents threw them a congratulatory dinner. I wasn't invited. It was last minute, Mom explained when I asked about it. "We didn't think you'd want to come, with how busy you are in your new house and job." The distance grew. Sunday dinners became monthly, then sporadic. When I did attend, conversation was strained, with undercurrents of resentment bubbling just beneath the surface. I was becoming the outsider, the selfish one who had chosen her own comfort over family loyalty. It hurt more than I could have imagined. Then came my birthday. I hadn't expected much. Maybe a card, a call. What I got instead was a dinner invitation from Melissa. "We want to celebrate you," she said, sounding more like her old self than she had in months. "Mom and Dad, too. We've been too hard on you, and it's time to move past it. Let us take you out. Bellucci's on Saturday. Your favorite." Bellucci's was indeed my favorite, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown where I'd always dreamed of having a special celebration. It was too expensive for everyday dining, but perfect for a 30-second birthday dinner that might also serve as a familial olive branch. "That sounds wonderful," I said, relief washing over me. "Thank you. Great. I'll make the reservation for 7. Oh, and I hope you don't mind, but Brian's parents are in town, so they'll join us. And the kids, of course." I hesitated. Brian's parents had never been particularly warm toward me, and adding 3 children under 10 to a fancy dinner wasn't ideal, but I was too grateful for the reconciliation attempt to object. "That's fine," I said. "The more, the merrier. If only I'd known then what more would actually entail." I arrived at Bellucci's at 10 minutes to 7, dressed in a new outfit I'd bought specially for the occasion. The maitre d' led me to our table, and I saw my family already seated, along with several people I didn't recognize. Melissa waved me over, a too bright smile on her face. "Ashley, happy birthday. You remember Brian's parents, Richard and Susan, and his sister Taylor with her husband Mike. And these are their kids, Emma and Liam. And Brian's brother Dave and his wife Jen just arrived in town this morning, surprise, with their little boy, Max." I stared at the large group assembled at what was supposed to be my intimate birthday dinner. 3 generations of my brother-in-law's family, none of whom I was particularly close to, plus my parents, Melissa, Brian, and their 3 kids, 13 people, at Bellucci's on my birthday. "Hi, everyone," I managed, accepting the chair Brian pulled out for me, right between Susan, who had once commented that my career was a nice hobby until I found a husband, and one of the children, who was already spilling breadsticks onto the floor. My mother leaned across the table. "Isn't this nice? The whole family together." Except it wasn't my whole family. It was mostly Melissa's in-laws, people who had no reason to celebrate my birthday, and whom I barely knew. Before I could process what was happening, waiters appeared with wine for the adults and elaborate mocktails for the children. Menus were distributed, and Melissa's father-in-law Richard took charge. "Order whatever you like," he announced magnanimously. "This is a celebration." I watched in growing alarm as everyone at the table took this directive to heart. Appetizers were ordered for the table, not 1 or 2, but 6 different dishes. The children, encouraged by their parents, selected the most expensive items on the menu. "It's a special night," I heard Brian's sister tell her daughter as she ordered the $75 lobster. By the time the main courses were ordered, including premium wine pairings suggested by Richard, I was doing mental calculations that made my palms sweat. This dinner was easily going to run into the thousands. During a momentary lull, I pulled Melissa aside, using the pretense of a bathroom trip. "Melissa, this is a lot of people. And they're ordering like there's no tomorrow. Who's paying for all this?" She gave me a blithe smile. "Don't worry about it tonight. It's your birthday. Just enjoy." "That's not an answer," I pressed. "Seriously, what's the plan here?" Her smile faltered slightly. "Well, you're the one with the big promotion and the new house. We thought, it's tradition for the birthday person to treat, isn't it?" I stared at her, incredulous. "You invited a dozen people to an expensive restaurant for my birthday and expected me to foot the bill, without even asking me?" "Don't make a scene," she hissed, glancing back at the table. "It's not a big deal. You can afford it. That's not the point. This isn't what I agreed to. I thought this was you and Mom and Dad taking me out to mend fences, not me hosting a feast for your in-laws." "Lower your voice," she said, gripping my arm. "Look, we can talk about this later. Let's just get through dinner without embarrassing everyone." I returned to the table seething but determined not to create a spectacle on my birthday. I picked at my food, my appetite gone, watching as more bottles of wine were ordered, as children sent back dishes they decided they didn't like after all, as dessert menus were eagerly perused. By the time the check arrived, strategically placed next to me by a waiter who had clearly been instructed about the birthday tradition, I was ready to explode. I glanced at the total, $3,247.82, for a dinner I had neither planned nor agreed to host. The table had gone quiet, all eyes on me expectantly. Even the children seemed to be holding their breath. I looked at my family, the parents who had taught me the value of hard work, but now expected me to bankrupt myself for their comfort. The sister who had organized this ambush under the guise of reconciliation. The extended family who likely had no idea they were pawns in this game. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not paying for everyone's dinner." Richard laughed uncomfortably. "It's your birthday celebration, Ashley. Surely you're not expecting guests to pay." I didn't. "Invite guests," I replied. "I was invited to dinner by my sister, who led me to believe my family wanted to celebrate me. Instead, I was ambushed with a table full of people I barely know, ordering the most expensive items on the menu, with the expectation that I would cover thousands of dollars without any prior discussion. My mother's face had gone pale. "Ashley, please, don't embarrass us." "I'm not the one creating an embarrassing situation," I said, rising from my chair. "I'm happy to pay for my meal. For the rest, I suggest you ask the person who made the reservation," and invited everyone. I signaled a waiter and quietly asked for my portion of the bill to be separated. The resulting silence at the table was excruciating. "I can't believe you're doing this," Melissa finally said, her voice shaking with anger. "After everything we've done for you." That phrase again. The elastic band of obligation stretched to snap me back into line. But this time, it broke. "What exactly have you done for me, Melissa? Or any of you?" I looked around the table, no longer caring about causing a scene. For years, I've been the one everyone turns to when they need money. I've given and given until there was almost nothing left for me. And the one time I decide to do something for myself, buy a modest home with money I earned, I'm treated like I've committed some terrible betrayal. My father started to speak, but I cut him off. "No, I'm done. I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done with the guilt trips and the manipulation. I'm done being made to feel selfish for wanting what everyone else takes for granted. A life of my own." The waiter returned with my separate check, $89.43 for my meal and a share of the appetizers. I placed 5 20s on the table, grabbed my purse, and stood. "Happy birthday to me," I said, and walked out of Bellucci's without looking back. The cool night air hit my face as I pushed through the restaurant doors, tears threatening to spill over. My phone was already buzzing in my purse. Undoubtedly, my mother or Melissa calling to demand I return and fix the mess I'd left behind. I ignored it, walking briskly toward the parking garage where I'd left my car. I was shaking, with anger, with hurt, with the adrenaline of finally standing up for myself after years of acquiescence. By the time I reached my car, the tears were flowing freely. I sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, trying to collect myself enough to drive safely. My phone continued to vibrate. Text messages now, a cascade of them. I finally looked. "Mom, how could you embarrass us like this? Come back right now." "Melissa, you selfish bitch, you've ruined everything." "Dad, your mother is crying. I hope you're satisfied." And then most tellingly, Melissa again. "They're saying we need to pay over $3,000. We don't have that kind of money." That was the crux of it, wasn't it? They didn't have the money, so naturally it should be my responsibility. The fact that they had created this situation without my knowledge or consent was apparently irrelevant. I turned off my phone, started the car, and drove home to my house with the yellow door. The house that represented the first truly selfish choice I'd made in my adult life. And despite the chaos I'd left behind, despite knowing that bridges had likely been burned beyond repair, I couldn't bring myself to regret walking out. For the first time in years, I had stood up for myself. The cost was high, possibly my relationship with my family, but as I pulled into my driveway, I felt something unexpected: relief. I slept fitfully that night, waking often to replay the scene at Bellucci's in my mind. By morning, I had dozens of missed calls and unread messages, most of them angry, some pleading, all designed to pull me back into the fold on their terms. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I made coffee, sat in my bay window, watching the sunrise paint my new neighborhood in soft gold, and began to consider what my life might look like without the constant drain of family expectations. It was terrifying and exhilarating. Monday. Morning brought a welcome distraction in the form of work. I threw myself into my new role, grateful for the focus it required. Zoe cornered me at lunch, concern written across her face. "Okay, Spill. You've been radiating don't talk to me energy all morning, and you've checked your phone approximately 9,000 times, only to frown and put it away again. What happened? Over sandwiches in the office break room, I told her everything. The ambush birthday dinner, the astronomical bill, my dramatic exit. Holy shit, she breathed when I finished. You actually did it. You finally stood up to them. I guess I did. I picked at my sandwich. And now I don't know what happens next. What happens next is you live your life, Zoe said firmly. You enjoy your new house and your new job, and you stop letting them make you feel guilty for your success. There, my family, Zoe. Family doesn't treat each other like piggy banks. Family supports each other's dreams. I knew she was right, but 32 years of conditioning doesn't disappear overnight. The guilt was still there, simmering beneath my resolve, whispering that I had failed in my most fundamental obligation. What if I was wrong? I asked quietly. What if I am being selfish? Zoe's expression softened. Ash, wanting something for yourself isn't selfish. It's human. Your family has convinced you that your only value is in what you can provide for them. That's not love, that's exploitation. Her words hit hard, forcing me to confront a truth I'd been avoiding for years. My family's love had become conditional, measured in dollars and cents, in sacrifices made and dreams deferred. So what do I do now? Now you set boundaries, she said. Clear, firm boundaries about what you will and won't do, and then you stick to them no matter how hard they push. Boundaries. The concept was almost foreign to me when it came to my family, but I knew Zoe was right. If there was any hope of salvaging these relationships, it would have to be on new terms, terms that included respect for my autonomy and my right to prioritize my own well-being. That evening, I finally turned my phone back on and crafted a single message to my parents and Melissa. I love you all, but I can't continue to be the solution to everyone's financial problems. I'm willing to talk when you're ready to respect my decisions and my boundaries. Until then, I need some space. I pressed send before I could second-guess myself, then turned my attention to unpacking boxes in my new home. My home. The phrase still felt strange, tinged with both pride and a lingering sense of guilt. The responses came quickly, predictably upset. Mom suggested I was having some kind of breakdown. Dad reminded me of all they had sacrificed for me growing up. Melissa simply sent a series of angry emojis followed by, I hope you're happy in your big house all alone. I didn't respond to any of them. This was part of setting boundaries too, refusing to be drawn into justifying my position over and over again. Days passed, then weeks. The initial barrage of messages slowed to occasional guilt-laden texts, which became easier to ignore as time went on. I settled into my new routine, my new home, my new life. I made friends with my neighbors, planted flowers in the yard, painted the living room a soft sage green that made the morning light dance. And slowly, the weight I'd been carrying, the constant pressure to solve everyone else's problems, to put their needs above my own, began to lift. I started sleeping better. I smiled more. I felt lighter, more myself than I had in years. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of doubt, of loneliness, of wondering if the price of my independence was too high. But then I would walk through my home, the home I had earned, the home no one could take from me, and know that I had made the right choice. 2 months after the Bellucci's incident, my mother called. Not to apologize, not exactly, but to extend an invitation to Sunday dinner. Just the family, she assured me. We miss you. I accepted cautiously, setting clear expectations. I'm happy to come, but I won't be discussing my finances or responding to requests for money. The dinner was awkward at first, conversation stilted and careful. But it was a start. My father asked about my job, and for once seemed genuinely interested in my work rather than my salary. Melissa was civil, if not warm. By dessert, things had thawed enough for genuine laughter over a story Mom told about her latest misadventure with online shopping. As I was leaving, Mom pulled me aside. "We're trying, Ashley," she said softly. "This is new territory for all of us." "I know," I replied. "Thank you for trying." It wasn't a magical reconciliation. The path forward would be rocky, the old patterns difficult to break. But it was a beginning, a foundation for relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. In the months that followed, I held firm to my boundaries while remaining open to rebuilding connections. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Melissa continued to struggle with my new stance, oscillating between grudging acceptance and bitter resentment. My parents made more consistent efforts, though occasional comments suggested they still didn't fully understand my perspective. Through it all, I kept working, kept building my life on my terms. I advanced in my career, made improvements to my home, started dating someone who supported my independence rather than seeing it as a resource to be tapped. I began to recognize my own worth beyond what I could provide for others. And sometimes, late at night as I sat in my bay window looking out at the neighborhood I now called home, I thought about that night at Bellucci's, the night I had finally said, enough. It had been painful, messy, far from the dignified stand I might have imagined, but it had been necessary. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to walk away from relationships that demand your self-destruction as proof of your devotion. Sometimes family isn't about blood or obligation or settling debts. Sometimes family is what you build for yourself. One boundary, one choice, one brave step at a time. A year after the Bellucci's incident, I hosted Thanksgiving at my house. Not everyone came. Melissa and her family declined, but those who did arrived as guests rather than creditors. We ate turkey at my dining room table, admired the improvements I'd made to the house, and talked about things other than money. It wasn't perfect. These new relationships, built on honest communication rather than financial dependence, were still fragile, still finding their form. But as I looked around at the people gathered in my home, my parents, trying their best to adapt, a few cousins who had never been part of the expectation cycle, friends who had become like family to me, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, not for what I had given or what I had received, but for what I had learned. That true family supports your growth rather than stunting it, celebrates your success rather than resenting it, and loves you for who you are rather than what you can provide. And that sometimes the greatest act of love is having the courage to say no. 6 months to the day after I'd walked out of Bellucci's, I received a text from Melissa that I hadn't expected. "Can we talk? Just you and me." "Coffee this weekend?" I agreed, cautiously, optimistic but prepared for another confrontation. We met at a small cafe halfway between our homes, the neutral territory adding to the sense that this was a diplomatic mission rather than a social call. Melissa looked tired, the strain of the past year evident in the new lines around her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. We exchanged awkward greetings and made small talk about the weather until our coffees arrived. Finally, she took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology." Of all the things I had expected her to say, this wasn't one of them. I stayed silent, giving her space to continue. "What I did at Bellucci's was wrong," she said, staring into her coffee. "Setting you up like that, expecting you to pay without discussing it first, it was manipulative and unfair." "Yes, it was," I agreed, not unkindly, but not rushing to absolve her either. She nodded. "I've had a lot of time to think about it. About all of it. How we've treated you over the years, what we've expected from you. I was angry when you bought your house, when you started saying no, because it meant I couldn't rely on you to bail us out anymore. But that was never your responsibility in the first place." I felt a tightness in my chest begin to ease. "What changed?" I asked. She gave a small, rueful smile. "Brian and I nearly separated over the money issues. It forced us to really look at our finances, at the pattern we were in. We've been seeing a financial counselor. It's been eye-opening. I'm sorry about the strain on your marriage, I said, and meant it. Don't be. It was the wake-up call we needed. She hesitated, then reached across the table to touch my hand briefly. I miss my sister, Ash, the one who used to be my best friend before money got in the way. I felt tears prick at my eyes. I've missed you too. I'm not asking for anything, she added quickly. No loans, no bailouts, just maybe we can try to be sisters again, without all the baggage? It wouldn't be that simple, of course. The baggage of our past wouldn't disappear with one coffee and an apology. But it was a start, an acknowledgement of the problem, and a genuine desire to change it. I'd like that, I said. But the boundaries stay. I won't go back to being the family bank. I wouldn't expect you to, she said. In fact, I've told Mom and Dad to stop asking you for money too. That's part of why they've been better lately. We talked for 2 hours, beginning the slow work of rebuilding what had been broken. There were difficult moments, old hurts revisited, defenses that flared before being cautiously lowered again. But by the time we parted with a tentative hug, something had shifted. Not magically healed, but pointed toward healing. I'm proud of you, Melissa said as we stood to leave. For the house, the job, for standing up for yourself. I should have said that a long time ago. Those words, so simple and yet so profound in their validation, stayed with me for days afterward. They represented everything I had wanted from my family, not their dependence, but their recognition of my right to pursue my own path. The road ahead wouldn't be smooth. Old habits die hard, and there would be moments when the boundaries would need to be reinforced, when the temptation to slip back into familiar patterns would surface. But something fundamental had changed. In me, in my family dynamics, in what I was willing to accept. 3 years after walking out of Bellucci's, I sat on the front porch of my house with the yellow door, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. My mortgage was significantly paid down, my career continued to advance, and my relationship with my family had found a new equilibrium, not perfect, but healthier than before. The phone call that evening was from my mother, not with a financial crisis, but with an invitation. Dad's retirement party next month, nothing fancy? Would I like to come? Of course, I said. What can I bring? Just yourself, honey, she replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. That's all we need. As I hung up, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The painful confrontations, the lonely nights, the difficult work of redefining relationships that had been built on unhealthy foundations. It hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. Because sometimes the most important boundaries aren't the ones that keep others out, but the ones that allow you to stand firmly in your own truth, your own worth, your own right to exist as more than what you can give to others. And in that standing firm, in that refusal to be diminished or defined by others' expectations, there is a kind of freedom that can transform not just your own life, but the lives of those around you if they're willing to grow with you. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving a trail of stars in its wake. Inside my house, my sanctuary, my achievement, my home, lights glowed warm against the gathering dusk. I thought about the girl I had been, so eager to please, so afraid of disappointing others that she had nearly disappeared beneath the weight of their needs. She was still there, that girl, but she had learned to speak up, to stand her ground, to recognize that her dreams were as valid as anyone else's. She had learned that real love doesn't demand self-erasure as proof of devotion. She had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from a table where you're expected to feed everyone but yourself. And in that walking away, she had found her way home, to the house with the yellow door, to herself.